from what we have. Our identity comes from what we have. And also, what the psychologists are doing are making you feel that something is wrong with you. Do you know you're too fat? Did anyone tell you? How many of you will think you're too fat unless you see a million of and once you think you're too fat, I can sell you something to make you thinner. Do you know in 1900 they used to sell pills to make you fat because fat was beautiful? Did you know that? Because if you were poor, you were thin. If you were rich, you were fat. So there was medicine to make you fat because fat was beautiful. That's why if you go back to the 50s and 60s, maybe 70s also, and look at Bollywood films, all the actresses are fat. And we, with our Western mind, will think, why is she starring in that movie? She's fat. Because fat means you have money. When I traveled in India in 1975, everyone on the train was skinny, everyone on the airplane was fat. Because the fat people could eat rich foods. Or the rich people could eat fattening foods. Right? So then, if you were thin, something was wrong with you. I could sell you something to make you fat. Now, if you're fat, something's wrong with you. I can sell you something to make you thin. Yes? This phone, it's not an iPhone. It's an Oppo. I'm a loser. I have an Oppo. It's only 15,000 rupees. Right? If I see enough iPhone ads, I'm going to want an iPhone, and I'm going to be very unhappy about this phone. Correct? If I have the samskars, the consumer samskars. So the whole consumer mentality is to make us feel something is wrong with us because we don't have the latest version of something. And you've probably heard of planned obsolescence. That means a product is built to not function after a certain point. Right? It's conceived that way. It will only last a certain time. So it can be burned up, and then you can buy a new one. But there's also perceived obsolescence, which means your high heels are thin, but now the style is thick, so you have to buy the new ones. So your perfectly good shoes are obsolete because nobody wears those this year. Yes? Yes? That's how it works. Every season there's a style. If green is in style and you're wearing red, people will look at you and distance themselves. They don't want to be around you. There's something wrong with you. That's perceived obsolescence. So that's how consumer culture works. Now, for some amazing facts. I know this, you'd rather hear the Bhagavatam, but you'll hear it tomorrow, and you heard it yesterday. So I think this is valuable because I think it'll put this discussion of Varnashram in perspective. This is amazing. 99% of what the average consumer buys in the Western world lands in the garbage 6 months later. 99% lands in the garbage within 6 months. Is that insane? That's consumer culture. What did he say? We have to create it, dispose of it, burn it up, recreate it. Okay. Now, I'm going to scare you a little bit. Today in China, they have as many cars as we have in America. If China keeps growing, they put 1,000 cars on the road every day. If China keeps growing at this rate, to the point, in America, everybody has a car or two or three. I had a car when I was 16. That's America. If China grows to the point where everyone has a car, they will need as much oil every day as the world now needs every year. Is that crazy? So, can the world continue at the rate it's going, consumerism? If India wants to live like America, India is going to surpass China in population because India doesn't have a restriction. Can India live like America? They want to. They'll destroy the earth. It doesn't work. So, When you talk about varnashram, you talk about living off the land. What are you talking about? You're talking about what grows in your village, basically, primarily. What you get in your village, isn't it? Village economics. Okay, one more thing. Just so you understand, it's kind of interesting. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the world before the Industrial Revolution didn't live like this. There was no consumerism because no one had any money. And things weren't shipped across the world. It was just what you got locally. When trade routes were open, when steamships, factories, what happened? New jobs. People started making money. You could sell things in London. London could sell things in India. And it was all going all over the world. All of a sudden, money's coming in people's hands. They never had money before. Now there was a market for products, refrigerators, stoves. Oh, I forgot to tell you, 1.5 computers are thrown away every year, and they all work. 1.5 million computers are thrown away every year, and all the computers are still working. That's consumer culture. So 3 million refrigerators thrown away, 3 million phones every year, 3 million people buy new phones while the old phones still work. That's consumer culture. So varnashram, it's based around the land, it's based around simple living. And so going back to the devotee who was working from 7 in the morning till midnight, he can't practice Krishna consciousness. So one time, Prabhupada said, this economy will crash. It cannot last. He didn't say when, but he said it would happen. I don't think you have to be an economist to see. It is American. What's the debt of America? Does anybody know what they're up to? 5 trillion, 6 trillion, 7? I just started getting Social Security, and I just found out there is no money. The money they give me is borrowed money to pay me my Social Security. They don't have money to pay it. And a football field every second of Amazon rainforest is being plowed so we can cultivate cattle for meat. How can this continue? How can the world continue like this? And I could go on and on and on. But the point I wanted to make is that when Prabhupada talks about varnashram, he's talking about for us to create a social system which supports the practice of Krishna consciousness. So Western life, in general, it doesn't support the practice of Krishna consciousness. I travel, I don't know, like 15 countries a year practically, and I'm dealing with grihastas all the time. And most of them have very compromised spiritual lives. Wouldn't it be nice to have a place where you could live and be employed by devotees producing products that would actually help people become Krishna conscious, like food and education and so forth, deities, whatever? Wouldn't that be nice to live like that? Prabhupada said grihastas should only live in the city to preach. Otherwise, they shouldn't live in the city, because he knew they'd become dependent. So Prabhupada was like, he was like the green activist on steroids. You agree, Lakshmi Mani? He was like more green than green. He was completely against industry. When Prabhupada saw the communist symbol, sickle and hammer, sickle for farming, hammer for industry. He said, I like the sickle, but I don't know about the hammer. He said, the hammer has hammered civilization. Industry has hammered civilization. He was totally against it. He was greener than green. He was completely against it. And he wanted us to live that way. Simple. And so I just wanted to make the point that when we discuss varnashram, in the context of it, the whole context is how it will help people become Krishna conscious, including ourselves. Because if we're part of that society, it's very, very difficult, because we're working so hard just to pay bills. And that's the system we buy into, and we're educating